Listen to the Vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. I'm very happy to welcome back Dick Wybrow, who has got a book series called Kane. And, man, you've got 5 books out in a very short amount of time. And we're going to talk about that and just catch up with you, man. What's been going on?
Yeah, I do want to say thanks to you, Kyle, too, because you were here from the start, so we're kind of bookending now. The first book and now the last book in the series, and it's just been about a year apart. Not a lot of time, but you were so welcoming, and you have such a warm show. So I really appreciate your kindness and everything. So you really helped set the tone for the rest of the interviews after that. So much love to you, brother.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, things are going well. You know, it's been a crazy, crazy year. When I first put Kane out, it was one of those things where, and I've talked about this recently to some other folks, but it's one of those things that, because you remember the storyline. It's nuts. It's a bizarre it's a bizarre storyline, basically about a wolf in the forest gets bitten by a man, and that wolf wakes up the next day and he's a 6'7" French Canadian. And now when that guy goes into the full moon, he turns into a werewolf. When he goes into a lesser phase of the moon, he turns into a lesser wolf, which is dogs. And so that's crazy. That's a gonzo idea. And so I'd had some version of this floating around my head for some time. And I put it off because I was like, nah, people, this is too nuts. This is too bizarre. People are going to want this. And I was wrong. People seem to have really gravitated to the story. And I think part of it, too, is about sort of empowering the characters or letting that flow state come in, as I've heard some people call it, to where you create the character and the character starts to speak through you. And it's just being honest with the writing. You know, it's hard because I wrote something many years ago, more than two decades ago, and I had written 2/3 of a trilogy, and it was like written to the market, as we say. And it was something where it's like, I know this is what people are gonna like. It's sort of like this fire investigator, and he was going in and following the breadcrumbs to find out what turned out to be this assassination plot on the vice president. And it really excited some folks in Hollywood, and it got optioned, which says here's some money. We want to take a look at producing this. So I was convinced at the time that this sort of like this, gritty thriller style was something that I wanted to do. And when that sort of fell through, as a lot of options do in Hollywood, I was disillusioned for a couple of years, thinking that this is what I should be doing. And it was my wife, of all things, who said, "You're kind of miserable. You're not really enjoying this. You need to be enjoying the process." And so she was right. And it took me a couple of years to get that straight in my head. And so when I really sat back and I wrote Kane basically for just me, I just wrote what I wanted to write, staying true to the characters. And it just took off. It really blew up. And I'm really, really excited about that.
How in the world were you able to get all of that in a year's time?
Yeah, the one trick, and I would recommend this to other authors that are looking to go full time, is get fired.
All righty.
Yeah. So I did television for 20 years. I was a television producer for 20 years, and back in December of last year, the industry here, the television industry in New Zealand, collapsed. And we went from 2 television stations, and we cut that by 50%. And even the one that's remained, a lot of the local programming is going away. And so that's one advantage there. But the other side of it, too, is just when you're writing, the joy that I get from writing and sitting down and putting a story together, it's a lot of work. I mean, let's be clear. I mean, you're writing 100,000, 90,000 words or so. It's a lot of work. It ain't easy to do. For as much fun as it is and the joy I get from it, there's as much heartache and pain and blood, sweat, and tears that come out of that. But there is a compulsion to do it. But knowing that, book 5 is coming out here shortly, sort of knowing that I had a bit of an end. And I've had a number of people say, "Oh, I don't want to see the characters go away." All this stuff is, I don't know if they're going to go away, but this storyline is over, and I'm not going to bleed it out. I'm not going to be somebody who turns this into a 17-book series, because I know that if I wrote a 6th book, that would make me a lot of money. A 7th book would make me a lot of money. I know that, but this storyline ends in book 5, and sort of knowing that it had a bit of an end, I think really helped me get there. Seeing that finish line helped me get to the end.
Well, Jim Brown, who was one of the best running backs to ever play football, top of his game, and he walked away from it. Barry Sanders, top of his game, he walked away from it. Now, I know you're not walking away from it, but the
Yeah.
character or the book series is kind of stopping on top.
Yeah.
And I like that idea because sometimes it'll start getting too ridiculous and you kind of fall out of love with it if you drag it on too long.
I think that's a good way to put it. You've got to really be loving what's happening within these stories. Like I originally I planned on doing just three, and then as I was writing them, it was like the characters were like, "Well, let's do this and let's go here and let's," because it is about an evolution of the characters and about how, and I'll get too deep into it, about how Imelda is sort of this former criminal and she joins up with Kane, and Kane is this former wolf at trying to get to be wolf again. And there's a point sort of near the end of the story that they begin to sort of switch places. I don't mean literally like there's some transformation, but she becomes more animalistic and he becomes more human. And so I was really intrigued by that she starts off as somebody who's a bit of a victim in some ways, but by book four she's hard out and she is sort of becoming more Kane like while he's becoming more Imelda like. And so then book five became this resetting the world a bit. I mean, they still take obviously characteristics from one another and they change as they go. But I found that fascinating. And it wasn't something I prescribed. It was something that as you write, you start to see it. You start to see those themes kind of come out and you sort of embrace that because the subconscious is telling you, here's what these characters are doing. And that's been, it's fun to see that. It's really been a blast.
I think we talked about the last time that maybe you should make this into a movie. Did somebody approach you about making this into a movie?
I don't want to put as my some of my friends said, I would put the kibosh on it, but there is interest and I'm waiting to hear back. And a significant player in Hollywood is interested. So we'll see how that sort of goes. It's a sort of thing, I know a lot of authors talk about, oh, be perfect for a movie, but this is something I think that could work really, really well. I'd like to watch this. I'd like to see it. So yeah, we'll see how things go. And if not this round, who knows? It might be the next round. These, you take a look at Silos, a good example, Hugh Howey's Wool novels, and those were written a decade, 15 years ago, maybe more by now. And sometimes they just take a while to come together. And then you have other ones like The Martian. That guy had a film out, I think, a year after he wrote the book. So who knows? It's all going to happen on its own time frame. So we'll see. We'll see. I'll let you know if when and if that starts moving forward.
I can say I knew him when.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. It'll be good.
Well, if they do decide to make this into a movie, I know they'll get a hold of a project and they want to mold it into their own thing. Are you going to put an end to that and say, no, I want it my way, or how's that going to work?
No, I think it's funny. Years ago, there's Mel Brooks's kid, Max Brooks. He's a pretty well-known horror writer, and I had the privilege of getting to know him a little bit. And I asked them about when they ended up turning World War Z into a movie, because the book itself is quite different. There's some similarities in there, but for one, a lot of it's told first person through diary sort of style, which Max does. And I said, so, I mean, how much were you involved? And he just shook his head. He goes, I took my check and I walked away. He said,
Wow.
my dad taught me that. My dad, Mel Brooks, taught me that. If nothing else, it's just like, once it gets kind of into the machine, if you want a broken heart, over and over and over again, you get really close to it. He said, otherwise, I just take the check and walk away. And so I don't know. I mean, I would love to be more involved. You take a look at Blake Crouch, who, Wayward Pines and all that. His Dark Matter series is doing really well on Apple TV. And he's executive producer and he's the creator of it. So I think that he's probably gone through a bit of an evolution with some of his stories where he was able to take more creative control, and it's paid off because the series is really good. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how things go. But I think there is. I think there's. I'm happy to be a writer. I actually did television for 20 years, as I mentioned, but being a showrunner or something like that, I don't know if I got that in me. that sounds really exhausting to me.
Well, it just annoys me when I've read something and then I see the movie and it's nothing like the book, and I
Yeah.
mean, pardon my language, they bastardized it, and it really is disappointing.
Yeah, and sometimes that comes down to the narrative of how obviously how books are done as compared to television. Like I just started watching The Expanse, that old television series, after reading it some years ago, and I had to go back and start reading, like all of this side story stuff. None of that is in the book series, but it plays out pretty well on television. So we'll see. It would be fascinating to see. My book, Kane, the series itself, is basically two people, running around trying to do this thing they're doing, basically finding the secret to get to turn Kane back into a wolf again. It's quite simple, and so I guess you could add other elements in there because there are some, secret sort of cabal sort of stuff in there. But I would think that if they were to turn it into a film or series, I would think it'd be quite similar to what's happening on the page.
Well, I know you've been in the business for a while, and not everything actually hits with the critics,
Right.
but how do you take their criticism and turn it to your own favor?
I've been really lucky with this series, because knock on wood, I haven't had a whole lot of criticisms about the story, which has been really nice. I mean, I don't take a look at that as a bit of a litmus test for how good the book is, because even with the criticisms that people have had on stuff I've written in the past, that's fine. You have people engaged in the story. So I don't mind the criticisms. I don't mind when people are negative about the stuff I've written because those people are engaged. And I did radio for more than a decade or so. And I had people that hated me. I had 2 death threats.
Oh my gosh.
But that's the nature of sort of putting yourself out there, sort of, out in the public. But I found that the people, I was just saying this the other day, usually, and I mean, and it sounds like a mom thing, but 99 times out of 100, when somebody's taking a swipe at you, it's really not about you. And I'm 55 now, and I've learned that it's absolutely the truth. So if somebody's taking a swing at you and saying, "Oh, I hate this about you," or "I hate this thing you wrote," or just even in your daily life, somebody who's taking shots at you, most of the time, exceedingly most of the time, that's about something they're going through or something they're dealing with. So I think having that in your head really helps to process it. And on occasion, I've turned around to critics or people that have been a bit negative about my stuff and engaged them a bit, not all the time, but engaged them a bit. And some of them have been some of my ardent supporters. They're some of my biggest supporters, because I guess there were some are just looking for somebody to hear sort of the pain they're going through. And then I don't mean that in a softy, tree huggy sort of way, but there was somebody who was saying, "This is something that bothers me." And then I was able to address it with them, and then they realized my position or sort of the stance I was coming from, and they got it. And then we kind of all became sort of, I guess, internet friends in some ways, and they've been some of my biggest supporters. So, yeah, I mean, if you're getting people you've got to put it out there. Like I said a minute ago, when I wrote Kane, this is something that really came from inside me, and it was taking a big swing for the fences because it's nuts. It's a nuts idea. I accept that. And if people hated it, they were hating me. I know I would have sort of felt that. But you have to, if it's something that means a lot to you, take a shot at it. Whether it's drawing or art, or if it can be anything, customizing motorcycles, whatever it might be. If it's
Mhm.
something that's really important to you, take a shot at it. You're going to have detractors. You're always going to have them. But now, these days, I welcome them. It's fine. It's totally fine. Take a shot. I'm totally, totally cool with it.
Professional critics, I don't think they have the power that they used to have as far as
No,
the audience goes.
no.
Back in the day, when it came to movies, you listened to Siskel and Ebert and folks like that. And now you see such a contrast between the audience and the critics,
Yeah.
where, oh, this movie is the best, and the audience is like, no, that's crap, and then vice versa. So I don't hold to what they say anyway.
And keeping in mind too that being a critic it's like anything in media or anything in television or anything on the internet, is they've got to get some attention in some way, right? And so I think that sometimes they're contradictory to get that attention. And I mean, referring to some of the Rotten Tomato stuff, if I see a film that's got like a 90% critics and a 25% user score, I ain't watching that movie because
Exactly.
I know that's gonna suck, and I know more than likely that ending is gonna bum me out. And if I see the reverse, 25 critics and 90% audience, that's going to be a good movie. It's just the nature of it, because like I said, I think that there's a good number of critics that are trying to get attention. So they take something sometimes that is quite popular and go negative on it to be able to get those clicks. And so having sort of some of that in mind, but I'm with you. I'll go with what the audience goes for all the time. And it's turned out pretty well. There hasn't been a lot to watch of late. I haven't seen anything I've really, really liked in a good long time. But I'm waiting and I'm hopeful.
I read something that you talked about, which was comedy writing.
Yeah.
And kind of a key to writing comedy was to not to try to be funny. Now,
Yeah.
explain that one to me.
I find that, and it's difficult. You can say that you're a horror writer, science fiction writer, romance writer, that sort of thing, right? And you can say, this is what I write. Humor writing is subjective. And so I can say that I write humor, but it's really not up to me. People have to find it funny first. And so I could put my books in the humor category, but they've got to decide if it's actually funny, which is really sort of a bit of an amorphous sort of definition of what people like or what people find funny. When I'm reading something from an author, even an author I really like, and I'll name check one of them, Dean Koontz, for example. When Dean Koontz tries to be funny, I want to punch myself in the throat. It's just don't do it. Don't. You're so good at this thing over here, you don't have to be funny. One of the things that annoys me a lot, and there's another series that I'm reading, I won't name check, but when characters will laugh uproariously at something, like wiping tears from their eyes when there was a line earlier, it's like, well, it's almost like putting a laugh track in your book. If it's funny, people will find it funny. Just hit it and go. And so what I mean by not being funny sometimes is I've got moments all through my stories that I find funny at the time. And I'll go back and read it and go, that's just a little bit, that's indulgent. That's just me trying to sort of set up a bit of a joke. So I think the key to actually good humor writing is cutting out all the humor that doesn't quite work. And I know that sounds a bit simplistic, but sometimes, like if you're at a party or something, let's say you're there for an hour or whatever it might be, if you said two funny things or three funny things, and that's all you said trying to be funny, and they were actually funny, people would come away from that going like, that dude's kind of funny. But if you tried 20 things, three of them were funny and 17 of them fell, they'd go, that dude's kind of annoying. So sometimes the humor writing is making sure that the stuff you've got in there that is funny is actually funny or humorous in some way. So a lot of it comes down to editing, taking out the stuff that just doesn't work. And that's hard because you got to be subjective about it, because there's some stuff you really love. But if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You got to take it out. So that's what that means. Sometimes being funny is not being funny, meaning take out the stuff that really isn't that funny, and don't make your characters laugh uproariously and wipe your eyes and tears and all that on a line just to cue to the audience that was a funny moment and you should have found it funnier.
So you're going to take you a break for a little while?
No, I don't think so. I have another series I've got to wrap up that I've been promising to wrap up for a bit. I've got a good number of ideas that I want to put together. Finishing up the fifth book in this series was actually far more, I guess, emotionally, I won't say punishing, but it was difficult because I've got so many people sort of invested in the story now, and I really felt this need to get it right. And I spent a good couple of weeks in my editing process. I gave myself a little bit more time to edit book 5 in the Kane series, Kane Unmanned. And I spent a good number of weeks really wringing my hands over, I'm going to get this right. I want to get this right. But then eventually it was like, I've just got to tell the story the best way I can. There are going to be some people that are going to be sad that it's over. There's going to be other people that are going to love the ending. And my guess is there's going to be some people that are going to hate it. And I'm just going to have to take it. But as long as I'm germane, to the story, as long as I feel that this is the way the characters are going to go, then I feel like that's the only thing you can do. But no, when it comes to writing, it's my joy and pain at the same time. So I'll the day that I'm all finished up with the Kane series, or at least this part of the Kane series, I'll be up the next day, write the next thing. So yeah, I'll keep chugging away. It's what I love to do.
I can tell you want to put out good quality stuff, and you
Yeah.
care about the person reading, but
Yep.
you're doing what you love. This is a labor of love, and
I think
I
that
encourage
comes
you.
out. I think that comes out with it. It's like your podcast, the same thing. It's like if you're enjoying what you're doing, I think people pick up on that. For years, I was a talent coach in radio for a time. And if people pick up on the fact, if you're enjoying what you're doing, if you're sort of just phoning it in, people pick up on that too. If you're just writing the next book in the series because you want to make another, $100,000, whatever it might be, I think people will eventually pick up on that as well. And I read comments from readers all the time on that. If you're doing something you're having fun with, people will find the fun in it.
Yeah, you don't want to write that jump the shark book.
No. But I know there's plenty in me. I have no idea what series I'll gravitate to. Like I said, I've got a couple of them that are floating around in my head. And I'll just have to wait for my subconscious to pick the one I like to do most. But just even sitting down on a fresh news story is exciting to me. Starting to write something out. And I'll tell you this, it's a little bit like life. I have a plan for where it's going to go, and that plan never ends up going where it's going to go. So whatever I have in my head about what I'm going to write next, it'll look very little like what it ends up being. And I'm totally cool with that. I'm totally fine with that.
If somebody wants to buy your book, where do they go?
It's all over Amazon because that's where you got to go. But you can pick up the paperback almost anywhere. The first book is out. The second book should be out by now. And then the other three, if they're not already out, they're going through the process. And you can grab those from Barnes & Noble. If you're in the UK, you can grab those from Waterstones, I believe is the name of it. But they're all over the place. The paperbacks everywhere. And then the audiobooks are out as well. So if you're an audiobook listener like I am, you can check those out. Those are on Audible.
You have a website, right?
Yep, it's just my name. It's if you can't see the name back there, it's just dickwybrow.com. Go on by there, and I do some updates on there. And I'm pretty active on Facebook as well because I'm old. So I'm pretty active on Facebook. So swing on by there and say hi.
Well, I'm going to put all the links in the description just to make it easy for folks to find
Fantastic.
you. Man, thanks for reaching back out to me. I'm really glad that you did and that you got to come back on.
Yeah, I'm really glad to talk with you again, man. You were a great supporter from the start. So it's my pleasure to come back and see you again, brother.
Oh, of course, man. And anytime. Next project, too.
We'll do it.
And I also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, I hope you'll come back. Please hit that subscribe button. And for my regulars, you guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. And until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network